What if the world's most famous children's book wasn't written for children at all? What if The Little Prince was actually a secret confession, filled with heartbreak, exile, and the kind of loneliness most people never see? Behind its simple drawings of stars, roses, and planets hides one of the most tragic personal stories in literature. And once you know the truth, you'll never look at the book the same way again. When Antoine de Saint-Exupéry sat down to write The Little Prince, he wasn't living in France, surrounded by the comforts of home. He was in New York City, cut off from everything familiar, after his country had fallen to the Nazis. Friends described him as restless, chain-smoking, wandering the streets late at night. He felt like a man stranded on another planet, exactly like the prince in his story. But it wasn't just war that haunted him. Exile had left him with a deep ache, the feeling that he might never see his homeland again, that the France he loved might disappear forever. So instead of writing a political manifesto, he poured his pain into something more subtle, a fairy tale, a child's story that wasn't for children at all. And it was through this story that he confessed his own loneliness, his longing for connection, and his fears of being forgotten. But the clues he left behind weren't obvious, until you start to read between the lines. At the heart of The Little Prince is the rose, a beautiful flower, fragile yet demanding, that the prince both adores and struggles with. To most readers, it's just a symbol of love. But for those who knew Antoine, it was obvious who the rose really was. Her name was Consuelo, his wife. Their relationship was fiery, unstable, and full of contradictions. She was often jealous, he was often distant. He had affairs she threatened to leave. Yet no matter how much chaos surrounded them, they kept returning to each other. Just like the prince who loves his rose despite her thorns. But here's the twist. Antoine didn't make the rose perfect. He showed her flaws. He showed his own frustration. In doing so, he exposed the messy truth of love, that sometimes beauty and pain are inseparable. The prince's journey across strange planets feels whimsical at first, but each stop reflects Antoine's own disillusionment with humanity, the king who rules over nothing. The vain man who craves admiration, the drunkard who drinks to forget, the businessman who counts stars like they're coins in a bank. Every planet is a mirror of human weakness, and every character reflects what Antoine saw in society during a world falling apart. It was his way of saying, look at what we've become, obsessed with power, greed, and pride, while forgetting the things that truly matter. But the journey didn't end there. What most readers forget is that The Little Prince was written while the world was collapsing. France had fallen to the Nazis, millions were suffering, and Antoine was stranded in exile. Instead of writing about soldiers or battles, he turned to symbols. The desert became loneliness. The planets became humanity's flaws. The rose became love, and the fox. He became a lesson Antoine himself could never fully master, that real connections demand time, patience, and responsibility. But here's the question. Did Antoine truly live by those lessons? Or was the book his way of admitting that he failed? The fox whispers the most famous words of the story. You become responsible forever for what you have tamed. To most readers, it's wisdom. To Antoine, it was guilt. He had tamed people, his wife, his lovers, his friends. But he didn't always protect them. His marriage was stormy, his friendships fragile. And in those moments, he may have felt like the fox was warning him directly. The line wasn't just advice for children. It was a confession, a man admitting he had broken bonds he should have protected. Then comes the snake waiting in the sand. At first, the prince calls it harmless, but soon it offers him a way home, a single second that will end his journey. To children, it sounds like magic. To adults, it's far more chilling. The snake is death, quiet, final, waiting in the background of the story like a shadow. And here's the eerie part. Just months after finishing the book, Antoine disappeared on a reconnaissance flight. His plane was never found intact. It's as if he had already written his own ending, with the snake patiently waiting for him. In July 1944, Antoine took off over the Mediterranean and never returned. For decades, the mystery consumed historians. His body was never recovered. His plane only resurfaced in fragments nearly 60 years later. Some believe he was shot down. Others whisper he may have ended things himself, worn down by exile and despair. No one knows for sure. But what makes the mystery unforgettable is how The Little Prince seems to foreshadow it. The boy who chooses the snake, the pilot who vanishes in the desert, The book feels like a farewell letter he mailed to the world before disappearing forever. Today, The Little Prince is one of the most translated and beloved books ever written. But behind its gentle drawings lies a coded diary, a record of love, war, guilt, and longing. It survives because it isn't just for children. It's for anyone who has ever loved and lost, who has ever felt alone in a crowded world, who has ever searched for meaning beyond survival, and that's why it endures. Because in its pages, every reader finds a piece of themselves. Even now, readers argue about what Antoine truly meant. Was the prince his younger self? Was the rose really Consuelo? Was the snake his way of predicting his own fate? The beauty of The Little Prince is that it never gives you one answer. Instead, it leaves you with a haunting question. When all the stars fade and all the planets fall silent, what will remain of us? Our love, our bonds, or just the memory of a story, whispered like a secret across time? That's the mystery Antoine left us. And maybe that's why The Little Prince will never die. As the story closes, the little prince disappears into the desert night, leaving only mystery behind. Did he return to his rose, or did he fade away forever? Antoine never gave us the answer, and maybe that was the point. Because The Little Prince isn't about certainty. It's about the questions we carry. What is love really worth? How do we measure a life? And in the end, what will remain of us? Antoine left those questions hanging in the air, like stars scattered across the sky. And maybe that's why the book endures, because every reader is invited to find their own answer. So the next time you see a star, or hear the words of the fox, remember, the mystery of The Little Prince isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be felt, and in that feeling the story lives on.